The X-Zone Radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio and TV show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, and stations or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our new broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. On tonight's show, our first guest is a gentleman by the name of Eric Haas. And, you know, Eric's had a very, very full life so far, but this is what we believe was the catalyst. Eric said that he was clinically brain dead during an emergency operation for a burst brain aneurysm, during which he had somewhat of what he learned to be a common out-of-body life after death experience. He also received information concerning man's choices regarding environmental issues and what could be done about our ecological quagmire. He made an unusually fast and almost full recovery against long medical odds, wrote an award-winning novel about his death experience and his quest to prod humankind into a symbiotic relationship with the biosphere. Joining me now is Eric Haas. And Eric, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Good to be here again, Rob.
What were your views prior to your near-death experience on life in general?
Let's see. I'd always been something of a spiritual kind of guy, I guess you'd say. I was a philosophy minor in college,
Right.
Psychology major. So I was always very interested in all things to do with the human brain and that place where it meets spirit, where the physical meets the spiritual. So I had read, pretty much every ancient text on the planet, and I was just always a searcher. Wanted to know what exactly was going on here. And I kind of got a very abrupt answer to that.
What was the answer you got, in your own words?
Well, while they were working on me in this, it was an emergency surgery for a burst brain aneurysm. I was removed, and I was met with something I didn't expect to be met with: an omniscient, omnipresent, all-knowing, rather terrifying in one aspect because of the awe I was in it, being faced with this overwhelming presence. But in another sense, not what I was expecting from the vast amounts of philosophy I had been reading at the time. It was a very loving, very sort of fatherly presence.
Totally different.
Knew everything about me already. There was no room for speech or argument with this presence. It was terrifying and loving all at the same time. I spent a lot of time in my book trying to describe it, but you kind of can't really describe the infinite with the finite.
Eric, you and I have to take our first commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Exonation, Eric Haas is our special guest. www.consciousconsumers.net is the website. That's www.consciousconsumers.net. This is the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of professional broadcast networks, including Simul TV, including Sirius Satellite Network, including Turquoise Radio, including Talkstar Radio Network, and a growing number of independent broadcasters right across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, the Pacific Rim, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. Eric Haas is my guest this hour. www.consciousconsumers.net is his website, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Don't go away.
Watch me walking.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
Flu season is here again, and this year so is the H1N1 flu virus. By taking some simple steps, you can help protect yourself and others. Wash your hands with soap and warm water for at least 20 seconds. Cough and sneeze into your arm, not your hand. Keep common surfaces and items like doorknobs and keyboards disinfected. To find out more, go to fightflu.ca or call 1-800-O-CANADA. Knowledge is your best defense. A message from the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Don't wish it away. Don't look at it like it's forever. Between you and me, I could honestly say that things can only get better. And while
Exonation, Eric Haas is our special guest this hour. His website is www.consciousconsumers.net. And Eric, have you continued the environmental spiritual projects that you were working on since your last X Zone appearance about your clinical death experience and the paranormal life path that proceeded from your out-of-body experiences?
Yeah, they've continued even when I've tried to quit them and follow other life and career paths. And it's been things of a paranormal nature that have kept me working on them. Like I won this Green Book Award, which was kind of unexpected for a first novel, and I was preparing to do the next two books and working out an audio production of the first, and I got signed to an option agreement with an agent in Hollywood who's showing it around as a film. But I always felt this thing was very iconoclastic, not Hollywood. So I was trying to get more of a readership with the first before I started the second two, or rather released the second two. So I started to rewrite the first one now as a novel for young adults. And I rewrote the protagonist as a poet whose soul is an amalgamation of dead poets, and that's for reasons that also have to do with things that happened during my near-death experience. The protagonist in these books is a manifestation of myself and the realizations from my near-death experience and the ongoing experiences that stem from that. So this next book is going to come out as a young adult novel told in iambic pentameter verse form. And I'm doing that for a few reasons. Most important, I think, that is the young adult generation needs a very positively motivating anti-war novel.
Yes.
War is the central theme of these books because the core element of what I experienced while I was disembodied was about humankind's history of war. And one of the first things I said and wrote when I woke up after surgery was, I declare war on war. And I couldn't believe no one had done that before. And I started asking myself, why? Why me? Why should I be the one to, make that declaration and try to carry it forward?
Let me ask you, why not you?
Well, that's the thing. The answers I started getting from asking that question of myself, they came in visions and dreams and meditation and prayer, and they surprised me. And it became the core driving force of the protagonist in the book, which is me. And I realized that the same struggles that result in warfare are the same as our environmental problems. I realized that the battles, that fear's battles with love extend throughout the spiritual realms, and therefore warfare extends throughout our physical realm. So humankind's interactions with the physical realm have this same dynamic. That's, what we traditionally call war. Mm-hmm. That is to say, humans directly killing humans in wars between nations. But then there's a war in the entire biogeochemical realm. That is to say, the environmental situation. I believe, and studies kind of show, that you have to think yourself better than an enemy to psychologically justify killing them in battle. And we sort of have that same dynamic with our natural resource base. We take from the earth, we kill all kinds of animals and ecosystems and rape the earth right down to the mineral elements to make our way of life, and we sort of devalue it rather than live in a balanced, symbiotic relationship to it. And I see that as a form of warfare. And I'm not saying that that's as bad as directly killing other human beings in war, but the end result of that kind of relationship is kind of the same in that we're moving in the direction of killing all human beings if we stay in that relationship. And so that's my protagonist quest in this pre-apocalyptic book series, which is the same as my quest. I'm fighting a war on war that extends to the entire biogeochemical realm.
Hallelujah. It's about time somebody did.
Yeah. So, and then the forthcoming books after that battle extends into the spiritual realms, where I think all physical war is rooted. So solving the environmental dilemma is just the first battle in this protagonist's ultimate assignment to fight and win the war on war.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Since you and I were last on the show, there have been a number of conflicts worldwide. It seems that at any one given time, there is always a war going on. Look at the tension between the United States, Iran, Iraq, and Syria right now. The tension between Israel and Iran. The Prime Minister of Israel said, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, in the General Assembly of the United Nations, that under no conditions would he allow Iran to have nuclear capabilities.
Yeah.
And he said, whether I go in alone or as part of a group, we will take out their nuclear capabilities.
Yeah.
And
under the direct threat of their former president. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Exactly.
But it all goes back to their fighting over, land and resources. And the bigger players in this story are, there's a pipeline that Russia would like to have built through there. So there's a lot going on there, but it does come down to resources again.
But is it possible, and I'm asking you for your opinion, and only an opinion, is it in your opinion that there are some societies that cannot handle democracy and freedom?
That seems to be a spiritual thing that's going on there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a control system that refuses to let go, kind of like the petrol dollar here refuses to let go.
Yeah.
We've got these better ways of interacting with the environment, but there's like old controls that don't want to let go of the grab. So that's why I'm writing this as pre-apocalyptic, to try to avoid that the post-apocalyptic dystopian situation that's now so popular in the culture.
if the governments of the world were to say, all right, Eric, we've read your book. We've gone to your website at consciousconsumers.net. You've got a head on your shoulder. You've declared war on war.
Yeah.
How would you go about turning everything around? Now, let me just put a little disclaimer there.
Okay.
With what's going on in Washington, with the Congress, Senate, and the president not being able to come to any sort of an agreement so that 800,000 plus people will be paid in their jobs, and the government's not going to go, if you'll excuse the expression, belly up in a couple of weeks if they don't do something right. How would you turn things around?
Well, I can only go back to what I experienced while I was out of here for those brief minutes, and that realization was that everything we do here does matter, that there is an eternal realm, and we are all connected somehow, one to each other. We're all in this together, and we do have to find a way to cooperate and solve these old battles, because what's going on in the Middle East is an old brotherly war.
That's right.
And what's going on here is I think we've kind of moved away from what's made us successful, which is that connection to God and a unifying principle that had us all in this together, rather than doing things that historically have not worked. I mean, we seem to be moving in this country toward a system that's resulted in 165 million plus government graves. That was what happened under communism. Mm-hmm. And that's not war dead, that's the government killing its own people because, all power was in their hands. So we got to go back to what made us successful in the first place. Which
was what?
Which was living under a constitution that seems to be divinely inspired. I mean, people don't go back and read things like the writings of the men that made that document.
Also,
all very much, yes.
Also, they have to take into account the time that the document was written, the conditions of society when the document was written. Just not take it verbatim and just plunk it into our day and age. It doesn't work like that.
Well, the conditions have changed.
Yeah.
But, the core unifying principle that united people seems to be what we seem to be working against.
Yeah, it seems that back when the Declaration was written, it said, "We the people," and somehow it's been turned around and envisioned as "I the person." People have forgotten that they hold the power in their hands, and it's called voting.
Yeah, but there's also it's just a corrupt situation going on, and until we remove all the corporate money from influencing the leaders that are supposed to be working for we the people, that's the problem right there. You remove that singular problem, and I think you're going to go a long way towards resolving a lot of other issues.
In your opinion, who's the worst offender? Which industry? Which corporation?
I'm kind of partial. Have a particular stance against Monsanto.
I
look to be more evil than corrupting seeds.
Exactly.
I mean, come on.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. The way I look at it, number one is the big pharmaceuticals. Number two, the petroleum companies.
Yeah, big farm. I mean, you're changing the ways people, because I was studying to be a shrink, and it used to be the last resort was drugging people. Now it's like the first thing they go to.
Exactly. Like when I was going
You're altering people's consciousness, and that's not something you should monkey around with.
But for what reason? What's the real reason behind altering all the consciousness and dumbing people down?
Well, I could speak to that from Chinese philosophy. You keep the people's minds empty and their bellies full, which was ancient Taoism. You got easier, dumb people are easier to rule.
That's true. That's true. Yesterday I was talking to a guest about genetically modified foods. What's your position on that?
You're monkeying around with things that are untested. I mean, once you get away from what's going on in creation and start monkeying around on a genetic level with seeds, I mean, we have no idea what that's going to do to people's, biochemistry.
Eric, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, Eric Haas is our special guest. www.consciousconsumers.net. That's www.consciousconsumers.net. It's a great website filled with information. And Eric and I will be back on the other side of the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. Don't go away.
Demons inside, and it won't be long before you and me run the place in our hearts.
If you enjoy reading a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love From Out of the Woodwork by William S. Peckham. Sean Kennedy, a Toronto contractor, buys derelict houses, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, a century house in ruins, and starts the renovation, the house fights back. He is visited by ghosts of owners past. His visions are triggered by touching an oak mantle, reading a faded letter, opening an old locket, or opening a brand new casket in the basement. These visions will take you on a trip across southern Ontario from Niagara Falls to Toronto to Kingston. From Out of the Woodwork is now available in paperback and on your favorite electronic reader. To order your copy of From Out of the Woodwork, go to www.williamspeckham.com. That's www.williamspeckham.com.
This is the X Zone Radio and TV show on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our worldwide broadcast affiliates. If you have a question for Rob McConnell or his guest, or if you have had a paranormal experience, call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 0, or email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. And on major social media sites, our address is Xzone Radio TV.
Where is the moment we need it the most? You kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. Tell me your blue skies fade to gray. Tell me your passion's gone away, and I don't need no carrying on. You stand in the line just to hit a new low. You're faking a smile with the coffee to go. And tell me your life's been way offline. You fall into pieces every time, and I don't need no carrying on. 'Cause you had a bad day, you take it one down. You sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know.
Welcome back, everyone. Eric Haas is our special guest. www.consciousconsumers.net. That's You Had a Bad Day by Daniel Powder, and that should be the theme song for Washington these days. Oh my gosh. You know, we were talking off air, and I was telling Eric that if I was running Canada or any other country, I would make youngsters, and I'm talking about between the ages of 15 to 20, as part of their curriculum before they get out there and start doing whatever it is they want to do in life. They just have to spend 2 years in the military or in law enforcement. And that could be Border Patrol, that could be a game warden, that could be a local municipal police force, or Army, Navy, Air Force. I think that if people were to get a real dose of reality at a young age, things would change.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well,
And we have this entitlement society now where things are become so easy because of all the technology that's supposedly connecting us, and people just want that ease to just follow them throughout life.
it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's part of growing up, is realizing that.
Yeah. It's just like, the internet. As much as I use it, as much as I appreciate it, I still say it's the largest septic tank that mankind has ever created.
Yeah. Yeah,
Listen,
I agree.
tell
I
me-
have to kick thousands of spammers out of my site every day.
Really, eh? Tell me, after your near-death experience, how did your religious, philosophical views change? Do you fear death now?
I actually kind of wish I didn't come back here. I don't fear death at all. I'm kind of looking forward to being done here, just accomplishing what I feel like I have to do, which is all wrapped up in these stories I'm telling. And then hopefully I'm done and I can go back where I was while I was briefly dead on that operating table.
When you and I last talked, we were talking about Apocalypse Near, and you wrote it under the pseudonym E because of the paranormal events from your clinical death. Now, will that continue in the new book, and can you talk about the paranormal reason for the pseudonym?
Well, there's actually several reasons for that. I wanted to remove any, connection to my biological earthly form and the importance of being an author, and just have people concentrate on the protagonist's mission. And also because while I was in that situation of being clinically dead, and after I woke up from the surgery, I had no memory of who I was, what I was, where I was. Had amnesic fugue to the extreme. So that's also the protagonist's problem in this story, of being separated from any identity. So he's trying to figure out who he is, why he is, where he is, what he is, and why he's been put on this quest to fight this war on war and save the planet from the humans, etc. I was in that condition. It was the biggest fear of my life, and I was living it out. And ironically, that big fear came from an anti-war novel that I'd read when I was young, and a film that I had seen called Johnny Got His Gun. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely.
Douglas Trumbo's book about a soldier of World War I who gets blown up, and but he's still alive, although he's got what's called locked-in syndrome. And this is what I had. He's blind, paralyzed, deaf, dumb, blind. But he's conscious and he can't communicate. He's aware of everything going on around him. He's awake, but he can't communicate it to people. And he's just watching his life go on around him, and everybody's talking about him as if he's not there. And he's trying to break out of this state of being aware, but he's just a trunk left. His limbs have been blown off. He's paralyzed, deaf, dumb, blind. I was in that condition for a while, and so that was my ultimate fear. And then I found myself living it when I woke up. So the theme of my book and the tagline is "Fear is a fatal frontier." Be careful about what you fear, lest you manifest it, and let love persevere rather than fear.
Do you think that as a society, that we should bring back religious philosophies back into the schools? Or should there be a definite separation between church and state?
Well, that's one of those interesting things where if you look at that phrase right there, separation between church and state, that's not part of the Constitution. It's been twisted and made into that. But if you want to just deal with that question on the basis of statistics, when the Bible was part of curriculum and prayer was in the schools, the statistics just show across the board there wasn't teenage pregnancy, there wasn't all this crime. You can just go back and look at the statistics. And when we removed that from the schools and started telling kids that you're just a product of evolution, you come from a rock that got rained on, and now then you were a monkey and now you're a human, and then we wonder why they act like animals. You just told them they're an animal.
Exactly.
So I think there's your answer. Just look at the statistics of what happened when that was removed. So just remove the damage and go. If you want to do a real scientific experiment, put it back and see what happens. And then if it doesn't work out and people are still the same, okay, you can just always go back to where you were, which is a total mess statistically.
But science isn't everything it's made out to be, because science, history, and all the other so-called what's the word I'm looking for here? So-called, well, let's just call them sciences for now. They're wrong. They are the first who will not admit they are wrong. Look, we know now that Christopher Columbus didn't discover the Americas. God,
yeah.
The Vikings were here. The Irish monks were here. There was trade going on between the Mediterranean and North America way before Columbus. And yet kids are still being taught in school today that Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas. Yeah.
And they're also taught that, evolution, biogenesis, that, they come from a rock. Rock to croc, goo to you. And that's been proven scientifically over and over again that that's a belief system. That's a religion. There's only the adaptation of species within species. species. That's the only part of the so-called evolutionary theory that's provable. Everything else is a belief system. There's no scientific evidence. There's no fossil record for it. But that's taught in the schools
Yeah.
as science. But it's not science. It's a belief system. So they're really just two competing belief systems. If you want to talk about, the God question and evolution, it's just another belief system. There's no science supporting it. There's a number of books written that totally tear the theory apart.
Tell me, do you believe that extraterrestrials may have had anything to do with the creation of life on this planet?
Well, I've actually seen UFOs in my life, and I don't know if they were extraterrestrial from here or, but that's, when you look at, cave paintings, there is some things that can lead you to believe that we were visited in our ancient past, and I don't know, but I think that's kind of that's even a more far-fetched theory than looking at our own ancient writings about what's going on between us as a species on the planet and why we're in the situation we're in. So it's a possibility, but and again, I've seen things flying around that I don't know what they were. They appeared to be nuts and bolts things that were very strange, but I could have just been seeing some government technology that's just. I used to live near Homestead Air Force Base, so I saw some things flying around that I don't know what they were, but I can't say if they were extraterrestrial. It's a possibility. I don't know.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you. What do you hope to accomplish with your book and internet projects? And what's the end game?
Well, I intend this to be the greatest anti-war novel ever written. That's what I'm moving towards here.
What kind of what are some of your internet projects that you've got going?
Well, the way that my websites interact with these books is why I won the award. You can interact with these characters, and the idea is for these stories to move people to act in the real world. And I want to get people in touch with their spirit and the spiritual reasons why all war is wrong and why everything we do here matters. And I intend to eventually get this from book form to film form, and I have a TV series that comes out of it that's sort of a historical reality show that's trying to influence people about putting them in that place of, like what you were just talking about, having to fight for your country, having to realize that we live in this system where freedom's not free. We all have to eke out of existence. We're dependent on the biogeochemical realm. We're stuck here together, so we got to find a way to work together, or we're going to slug it out until we all eventually maybe knock each other out of existence. I mean, we're living under a threat of a nuclear world again.
Yeah.
We thought that went away after Reagan and after the fall of the Soviet bloc, but now we're talking. We've got North Korea, saber rattling. Iran was saber rattling, and Pakistan's a nuclear. It's like we're living under the threat of total annihilation again. So that's what I'm crazy enough to try to do something about, and that's the end game of these books.
Do you think it's feasible? Do you think it's an attainable goal that one day one day that we'll all get along, that we won't have to have this massive buildup of armies, air forces, navies, the nuclear stockpiles, and we'll all get along, even though the majority of all the conflicts throughout Earth's history are caused by religion?
Yeah, and what I'm trying to do could definitely be classified as a delusion of grandeur, but, why not? I mean, I had less than 2% chance of surviving. I was never supposed to be able to live on my own again. So what else better do I have to do with my time than, take a shot at doing this and take what I learned while I was out of this body and share it and try to apply it and shoot, aim high, see if we can get there. Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to be nuts enough to do it, and I guess I've kind of been handed my hat.
I think it's a matter of someone has to be sane enough to do it.
Yeah, and I've kind of been handed my hat. I don't have a choice. I mean, I have a pretty serious amount of brain damage still, just getting through the day is a challenge. Moving around in three-dimensional space for me is very difficult. I'm peripherally blind. I have severe nerve pain and a few other things that, make life pretty difficult, but they also keep me reminded of that moment that I know that I, like every other human being here, has that absolute truth of you're all going to die someday.
Yeah.
And I know that it doesn't end at that point. Your biology ends, but you're going on. So you better get ready to deal with that and ask yourself what's going on here.
Is it possible that society has outgrown religion, and this is why there are so many battles and disputes over it?
I think they've outgrown religion, and postmodernism wants to think it's, good enough to leave all truth behind, and just, it's a giant cop-out. People will talk about things like the Bible or the Quran and all these other religious systems, and they don't even read the source code. They've never read the Bible. They've never read the Quran. They've never read the Tao Te Ching, the Bhagavad Gita, you name it. Bother to read it and understand where we've come from, and that, some of these systems make a lot of sense. Before you're going to criticize them and go on hearsay, read the source code. And know that there's a reason these things were written down at a time when writing a document was an extremely arduous process. It wasn't like you picked up a pen or a computer. No, you had to eke it out, and it was a painful, long process. So they had a very good reason to be writing this stuff.
As an American, where do you think the current political chaos that's facing the country in the U.S. is going to end? Do you think that this is going to be short-lived, and that the House and the Congress and the Senate will sign something in order to get the country running again, or is this a power play?
It's all a power play. That's the thing is, we got, some people are saying that, we're just doing this because of our constituents are demanding it, which is the way that it's supposed to work. But then you've got the other side that's, America's shutting down. Well, really, the shutdown means we kind of went back to what the Constitution says is the primary role of government. The protection of the country, so the military's still in business, and, the vital services are there. But we've got all this other stuff that we've gotten used to, and they're playing it off like, oh, America's shutting down. And it's really kind of going back to the core of what the Constitution says government is supposed to function. It kind of, the Constitution was written so, so people would kind of take care of themselves and govern themselves, and it was there just to settle disputes. But now we've got this entitlement society that believes, no, government's supposed to be my daddy and mommy and take care of me from cradle to grave. And that's been tried. It doesn't work.
Eric, stand by, my friend. You and I have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation, Eric Haas is our special guest, www.consciousconsumers.net. And he's the author of Apocalypse Now. Visit his website for his new books that will be coming out shortly. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Smile with the coffee to go.
A witch doctor's power and his ancient tribal ways cruelly collide with the force and authority of modern Africa. Africa is viewed through myriad eyes. You will never forget these characters. A young girl forced to endure a painful, cruel, and antiquated tribal custom. The sole survivor of a vicious tribal massacre. A nun who endures physical assault that compels her to question her faith. A deprived, disadvantaged schoolgirl who is infected with HIV. The translucent soul of a murdered friend. Welcome to Africa's Unfinished Symphony. While the tale of South Africa in the wake of World War II is riveting, violent, and cruel, it is also brimming with stories of kindness, compassion, and courage. Africa's Unfinished Symphony highlights commanding characters who not only bring haunting racial clashes to life, but also convey the intense conflicts that existed between archaic customs and modern influences. You will be captivated as you follow the convoluted path of Farida, of the ancients battling to become Bertha of the modern world. But are the outcomes of her struggle the best results for her and her beloved Africa? Africa's Unfinished Symphony will immerse you in historic African themes that will jolt you out of complacency and into compassion. For more information on how you can get your very own copy of Africa's Unfinished Symphony, visit www.luciamann.com. That's www.luciamann.com. And welcome back, everyone. Eric Haas is our special guest. His website is www.consciousconsumers.net. First of all, Eric, thanks very much for coming back to the X Zone. It's a great pleasure talking to you. And I guess my final question for you this evening, my friend, is there a paranormal reason why you chose to write your new book as an epic poem in iambic pentameter?
Well, as you may know, iambic pentameter is the English heroic epic verse form that was used by Shakespeare. And I feel that the same spirit that was communicating with me during my clinical death led me to write this book in verse. I mean, I'm telling an epic tale to try to accomplish an epic task, and then I felt called to write it like the epic poems of Western civilization. I mean, my rational mind tells me it's crazy to write a book for a modern audience in a poetic format from centuries past, but that's what I've done, and it's come out in January, and it feels like a paranormal manifestation, just like my last book. It doesn't make sense to write for young adult readers in this way, but neither did writing my last one. That took me places. So I'm going to let this one take me wherever it's going to take me.
One of the most popular books in the Bible, which is the #1 book sold in the world today, is the Book of Psalms, and it is all poems. So, my friend, I think you're onto something here. Yeah,
and the reason things were written like that, in measured rhyming verse, in ancient times, like the Psalms, was so that they'd stick in the listener's mind more easily, so that they could pass them on and act them out and act on them. And that's my intention with this tale. Like the Psalms in particular, like my heroine in this book, her name is Salah, and Salah is a Hebrew word which means reflect, think. That's used in the Psalms every time the psalmist wants you to stop and think about what was said. Just meditate on, think about what was just said. Take a breath. And so that's why things were told in poetry, so that they would stick in people's minds. I was about to give up on this thing, but there's actually another book coming out that a friend of mine who's been reading my work turned me on to, by a very popular essayist named David Rakoff, and that's coming out under Doubleday. It's a novel in iambic pentameter. And so that encouraged me to stick with this, because I was going to give up because it just seemed nuts. So that came along at the right time. And this guy did the same thing I did, but in reverse. He wrote his book as he was dying from cancer, and I wrote this as a recovery from dying. Mm-hmm. So it was all kind of seemed very interesting to me in a paranormal sort of way. So I stuck with it, and that's what I'm putting out next.
Eric, we've come to the end of tonight's interview. What are your final thoughts for the X Zone Nation? We've got about 30 seconds.
Fear is the fatal frontier, so let love persevere. We can do better than what we're doing here.
Eric, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself, my friend, and I look forward to having you back around Christmas time so we can talk about your new book.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rob.
You take care of yourself. Have a wonderful evening, sir.
You too, sir. Keep doing your job. You're a very important part of the press.
Thanks, partner. Good night now. X Zone Nation, Eric Haas has been my guest this hour. His website is www.consciousconsumers.net. That's www.consciousconsumers.net. I'll be back on the other side of the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as the X-Zone continues around the world from our broadcast center here in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send us an email...